You're not seeing things. I'm working on this Isuzu. I know it says GMC on it, but this is an Isuzu Npr basically. I sold a guy a truck and he wanted to trade this one in, and I really didn't want this truck, but it's an 07. It's got 149 on it. Power windows, power locks, cruise control, idle up circuit, power locks, whatever, you know, basic cheap old Isuzu. But it has a problem where it derates, and he just put a fuel rail sensor in this thing, fuel rail pressure sensor, a while ago, but it's surging real bad. And then once it's surged, check engine light comes on, it goes into derate mode, and that's it. I could hear a little whistle, and I figured it was, we had a boost leak. Right there. So this pipe's rotted out, so I'll have to call the Isuzu dealer and see if we can get one. Also, the brake pedal is very low. I'm betting there's like no brake pads left on it, front and back. You can pump the brakes up. Look, inner and outer wheels, nice. 215, 85, 16. It needs 2 front tires. I think the alignment's off because we're worn off on the outside on this side, and on the outside of that side, like the toe is out. Anyways, we got to find out what's going on here. Alright, so I threw some duct tape over top of them holes to see if that would make a difference in setting the code, and I've driven this about a half an hour and the code is never reset, so I'm pretty confident this is a problem. So now I picked up a new pipe from Isuzu, so we're gonna put that on again. It's another steel pipe. Great, the clamps ain't gonna be no good, so we'll get this off now, get it changed out. I replaced the air charge cooler pipe on the from the turbo to the air charge cooler, and that fixed the running problem. Hasn't been a problem since. Now, this thing has a very low brake pedal, so, and the steering's a little wanky. It's got what we call memory steer. You make a left-hand turn, and it wants to pull left. You make a right-hand turn, it wants to pull right. You're going down a road and you correct a little bit, and you have to pull it back because it wants to keep going. So, I pulled the front wheels off. I wanted to check the front brakes anyways, and what I found was the kingpins on this side would take grease. The kingpins on the other side, the bottom would, the top wouldn't. I put the grease gun on it, and it just built pressure in the hose. It wouldn't go past the grease fitting. Changed the grease fitting out, same problem, wouldn't do any different. So then I took the tie rod loose from side to side and tried to move the wheels by themselves, and the kingpins are sticking. They're rusty, they're real hard to turn, so it needs kingpins. The guy that owned the truck experienced running problems, took it to his mechanic. It was going to be $3,200 to get it run right, and he just wasn't into fixing it. He said that he's done, he's tired of Isuzu, he just wanted a gas motored box truck. So we took it on trade. He wanted a reasonable amount for the truck, so he sent me some pictures of it. We did the deal. He came and dropped the truck off. He told me what it needed. The man was very upfront, very honest. So this thing has what's called bud wheels. All right, on the front, we have one single wheel, obviously reverse rim because it's a dually, and on the passenger side, we have a right-hand thread. On the driver's side, you have a left-handed thread. So they go the opposite way. On the back, we have what's called inner and outer lug nuts. And anybody that's ever worked with these is very familiar with how miserable they are. What you do is you put the inside tire on the hub first, and you tighten this lug nut, and then you put this tire, this wheel, over top of that stud, and then you tighten. And anybody that's ever dealt with these knows that when you touch these, and ever you have them off, you put never sees on everything. on the inside of this, on the outside of it, on every single one. You can see here where the paint is burnt off the wheel because the last guy had to heat this up to get them off. If you have to heat these to get them off, two things. One, you should replace the inner and the outer lug nut after you've heated them up. And second, you should never seize the new ones, so they'll come off again. I went to go take this apart. I went and got my gun, and look. Someone else has tried to take this apart, and what's happened here is they've tried to back off this outside nut or tighten it up, and the inside one's loose. And more than likely, it's probably pushed that lug, that stud, into the hub now, and it won't grab. If this is the kind of stuff that you do, go back to your job as a Walmart greeter, because that's what you're qualified for. This is ridiculous. Got the linings off, or the drums off, and the lining's still pretty good. The wheel cylinders are dry, they're not leaking. I got the other wheel stud back in. The drum looks pretty good too. It's actually smooth, it's not cracked or anything. So we're gonna do the appropriate thing. We're gonna never seize around here where they get stuck. We're gonna never seize these. And then I'm gonna get those out. See how the inners are still there. Here's what you have. This is what it normally is. You put the first wheel on, and then you screw this in. They're both right hand on this side and both left hand on the other. So you put the first wheel on, you tighten this lug nut down. You put the second wheel on, it rests against this right here, and then you run your second lug nut on there, like so. And this would be tight so it doesn't turn. We got an improvement on the brakes, but it isn't great, so next thing we're going to do is try and isolate the problem if it's the front or the back. So we'll take vice grips. I'm going to put vice grips on the brake hose itself, because what I'm thinking is we got stuck slides and we're having to pump the piston out every time to get a pedal. So we're going to block these off and see if we have a better pedal. Alright, I'll put the cab down. Now before, after I adjust the brakes, you'd have a pedal, but it was still kind of low. Now we'll see. It's barely moving now. Start it up. Still holding. Alright, so that confirms that our problem is in the front, and I think the slides are stuck. And it's not letting, either the slides are stuck or the brake pad is stuck and not. I think probably slides are stuck. Let's get it apart and see. Alright, we got some issue. You can see there's very little lining here and more lining here and more on the outside, which tells me that, you know, this brake pad's not moving. Let's see what we got.
Well, the caliper slides are frozen, just like he suspected. And he tried an air hammer and it wouldn't budge. So he's going to try heating them up. See if he can get them moving.
Somebody put brake pads on this not long ago, because the outside ones are like brand new. And again, this is just more of the hackery that goes on. You know, somebody took this apart and probably didn't clean these up and didn't put any lubricant on them. And they get water in there and salt and all that from the winter. I'm not going to heat this up cherry red. I'm going to try and heat it up a little bit. Once I start seeing that smoke coming out of the end, that tells me got some heat in there. And I'm going to hit it with the air hammer again. See if I can get it out.
No, it's got smoke coming out.
Yeah. Watch all the rust coming out.
Let's see.
Where'd it go?
It's back there. I'll dig it out, but I can't do it holding the torch.
I'll get on the air and dig it out.
Okay.
All right. So I got the pins all cleaned up, and I've run them in and out of there now. I just take PB Blaster down in there. I don't use a file inside there. I don't want to distort that, so they're already pretty loose. So I just take PB Blaster, I turn this thing up, put it down in there, and I just work the pin back and forth. And as you can see, they're just fine now. So now we'll lube them up, and I take a file to the spots that are machined where the brake pads ride and get all the rust off of that, because that was another part. You don't know which came first. Did the pad stick first or did the caliper slide stick? Who knows? But they're not going to be when we're done. So I'm going to pull this rotor off, and it's just your standard two-wheel drive, you know, castle nut with a cotter pin. And I see these dust caps always so beat up, and there's no real reason. I mean, you can buy one of these tools really cheap. You see what they do. They bite underneath the dust cap and pop it off. Well, it's got Mac's name on it, but I'm sure a bunch of people make them. And they're nothing more than vice grips with that better tip on it to get underneath the lip of the dust seal. And you don't have to beat these up. So now we're gonna get the rotors off, and we're gonna see if they can be machined. These are not my favorite Npx. Boy, that was a little looser than I thought. It had some play in the wheel bearing. So we'll need to inspect them really well. Inspect that in just a second. Put the nut back on. Use the nut to hold the bearing back. Pop your bearing and seal out at the same time. That seal's no good. Look at that. It's been leaking. So now we need to clean these up and inspect them and see what they look like. Here's the outside pad from this side. Here's the inside pad. As you see, there's nothing left there. And being though we're thinner on the bottom than on the top, more than likely this thing was stuck in there like this in the slots where it rides. And then we know that the reason for the low brake pedal was, one, because this was worn, and two, because the slides were frozen. So being that that one's so thick, that suggests that they, just put brake pads on it. However, look at this drum, or this rotor. This rotor suggests that they ran the other one down so far that the rivets ground into the rotor, right? So what it looks like is they did a slam bam thank you ma'am. They came in, they pushed the caliper pistons back, they took the caliper off, put some brake pads on, and shipped it. So just how hot did this rotor get, I wonder? You tell me. And then pay close attention to that race. That race is loose in the hub. This hub's no good. So not only does it need the rotors machined, new bearings, because you can see that race, it's worn. You can see the discoloration doesn't show up as well on camera, but the fact that it is loose in the hub, I can't imagine I could get another race to seat in there and stay. That race should stay still, and the bearing should roll in the race. It shouldn't be able to move. But let's see if we can find a used one. The ABS light was on. I guess we kind of know why. I don't know if this is cracked. This could have got hot enough that it cracked somewhere, and it's just so greasy and gross we can't see it. But it doesn't matter. Alright, so you can see how it's shiny chrome right here, and then dull, and then shiny. That race is worn and needs replaced. It's not moving. It stays in place. The other one knocked out like I barely had to tap it. Let's see what this one's like. There's two reliefs down in here. You gotta find them. See, that one's taking some effort. It's so dark in there. You should use a punch that's designed for these races. I don't have it, so I use a brass punch. You see the relief right there? That's what I'm trying to cut. I'm trying to get my drift in right there. And there's one on the other side. Okay, so this is the outer brake pad. You can see how much material's left there, and there's the inner. Same thing. It's cocked. And these are both frozen. Won't move. So we have the same situation here. I got the inner race out for the bearing, and it took some doing, and it was in there good. So now what I want to do to check the other hub to see if it's any good is we're going to drive this race into that hub and see if it's tight. If it's tight, it'll tell me I can reuse it and just replace the race. If it's not tight, I'll have to have either replace the hub or take this to the machine shop, and they can knurl the inside of this, just kind of like an extension would be. I don't think I have any extensions with that on it. But anyways, when they knurl it, it'll create enough interference that it will hold the race. I don't know if they can do it on that. We'll have to see. So let's see if we can drive this in. So I put that race in this hub, and it's not moving, and it drove in pretty hard. So, you know, like you would expect, not anything out of the ordinary. So it's not moving. I don't see how hard it is to drive out. If it drives out like the other one, then I guess we're in good shape. If it don't, you still gotta do something. Ouch. Yeah, it's driving out like the other one did. Or like it did on the other side. So that's good and tight. So I think we'll be okay. Dodged a bullet right there. Jeez, it's actually really tight. It's coming. About it. Alright, so we'll go ahead and get new bearings, because obviously if one is worn, they're all not far behind. You saw what the races look like. So we'll put new races in Then we're going to see if we can have these machined. If we can't have them machined, we'll have to get these Torx bits bolts loose and change the rotor. Okay, let's move on. Wheel, called around, and being this is Japanese and they're metric bearings, I ended up at a very popular place that sells bearings and seals, and we got Nachi Japanese bearings. I got new races, new bearings, and seal. I gotta drive these into the hubs. You should buy a seal and race installer. It's a cone that's tapered so it fits inside here, so you get good even pressure, and you want to make sure you get it seated in. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the inner and the outer in, get this cleaned up a little bit, and I'll show you what it is when we're done. Just got back from the Isuzu dealer, got my kingpins, got my tires delivered. These are Mastercraft Stratus HTs. They're the same size and they're very comparable tread pattern, and they were reasonable. These were $152 delivered to me. I'm gonna paint the wheels. We're gonna use balancing beads in the tires. We're gonna use these. Nice thing about these balancing beads, you put them inside the tire and you take this outer bag out, and then there's a lighter bag inside that breaks apart. Once you start rolling, it rebalances the tires every single time you drive. So I don't have a balancer, and those work very well. I'd like those. So next I'm gonna take the tie rods loose and take everything I can loose. I ordered a kingpin press from Tiger Tools, so that'll be here in the next few days, and when it does, we'll get that going. I got shocks coming. What else I got? Brake pads are coming. Rotors are getting turned. Yeah, so let me start taking this apart. Tie rod's loose. Drag link's loose. A little trick on that is sometimes they're tough to get out of that knuckle. I'll take a jack underneath there, put a little pressure on it if it comes up this way. If it's supposed to come out that way, put a jack with pressure on the top, take a hammer, smack it right there. Pops off really easy. Now I'm going to take the bolt out that holds the kingpin in. I got the shock out of the way. This is the wedge bolt that goes through the spindle, so I'm going to take it off. And I'm going to leave the nut on a little bit, just so I can get my point of my air hammer to stay inside that nut. I'm going to try and drive it out. Well, I got it out. I hit it a bunch of times back here. What this bolt does is a flat spot here. Alright, there was a corresponding mill mark or mill spot on the kingpin where this goes in and keeps the kingpin from turning. We don't want the kingpin to turn inside the I-beam. You want the spindle to turn on the kingpin, because the spindle has replaceable bushings, which we'll be putting in. So this gets driven in there, and you can't tell now because I've pretty much took all the mushroom out of it with the air hammer, but this side here was mushroomed over where somebody just wailed on it. It's really not that, it's not that tight of a deal. I mean, tapping it in there till it stops and then tightening up on that side is usually adequate. You really didn't need to put a big sledge on it or whatever and mushroom the end out, but whatever. It came out. That's what I'm very thankful. It came out. I didn't have to heat it. I took an air chisel to the end around here to shake loose all around here where it was mushroomed, and then I put my center punch bit on the air hammer and beat down the center of it with the nut still on it, and it came out. So life is good. So now we're ready to take the grease cap. Just about fell out the bottom from beating on it. Now I'm going to take the top cap off, and that's as far as we can go on this side. We'll go to the other side. Alright, so I had to heat that up with a rosebud just to get the pin out, the locking pin. So I can just imagine what this is going to be like, trying to press this side out. I actually believe somebody did the other side and didn't do this one. Okay, so the parts are coming in. Brake pads, I ordered new hardware because the boots on the caliper slides, those pins, one of them has a tear in it, so I'm just going to replace them all. Drag link, all 4 shocks are here. Again, the tires are already here. We got the kingpins you saw. So this is kind of a good point to stop because we're waiting on the kingpin press from Tiger Tool. I haven't got it yet. So we'll stop here, we'll pick it up once we get the press, and we'll press these out, and that'll be part 2. So if you guys like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Leave your comments down below, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.